Now to the parallel stories of a Russian patriot and an American idiot. The patriot, Alexei Navalny, the 47-year-old Russian political activist who led the most successful opposition campaign against Russian dictator Vladimir Putin for more than a decade, galvanizing primarily young Russians to stand up against their dictator, using social media and just plain bravery. So successful in exposing Putin's corruption that he was barred from running for president against Putin in 2018. In 2020, he was poisoned with a military nerve agent while on a business trip to Siberia, blaming the attempt on his life directly on Putin. After recuperating in Germany, he returned to Russia in 2021 and was immediately imprisoned and sentenced to a draconian 30-and-a-half-year sentence on a series of seemingly trumped-up charges. Navalny was eventually transferred to a Siberian gulag, where he was kept in a punishment cell. He was seen in court Thursday via video link from the penal colony, seeming to appear healthy. According to Russian authorities, today he fell sick and lost consciousness after a walk and died. And whether you believe that he died under the brutal conditions in that Arctic prison or that Vladimir Putin had him put to death, either way, the responsibility for his death lies at the feet of Putin, as Vice President Kamala Harris explained during a forceful speech in Munich, where she met on the sidelines with Navalny's now widow, Yulia.
We've all just received reports that Alexei Navalny has died in Russia. This is, of course, terrible news, which we are working to confirm. My prayers are with his family, including his wife, Yulia, who is with us today. And if confirmed, this would be a further sign of Putin's brutality. Whatever story they tell, let us be clear, Russia is responsible. And we will have more to say on this later.
Which brings us to the American idiot. According to Craig Unger, who interviewed a former KGB spy named Yuri Shvets for his book, American Kompromat, Our American Idiot, Donald John Trump, a third-rate real estate developer from Queens who was desperate to break into the big leagues in Manhattan and to be respected by the blue-heeled elites he so claims to despise, first appeared on the Soviet Union's radar in 1977 when he married his first wife, Ivana Zelnikova, a Czech model. And he allegedly became the target of a spying operation overseen by Czechoslovakia's intelligence service in cooperation with the KGB. 3 years later, he opened his first big property development in New York, the Grand Hyatt, buying 200 television sets from a Soviet emigre and KGB asset who co-owned an electronics shop on Fifth Avenue. The asset befriended Trump and got in the habit of flattering him. In 1987, Donald and Ivana visited Russia, pumped full of talking points that the operative reportedly fed him by stoking his ego and telling him he should go into politics. To understand how to exploit our American idiot, the Soviets studied his personality. The former KGB Major Shvets told The Guardian, for the KGB, it was a charm offensive. The feeling was that he was extremely vulnerable intellectually and psychologically, and he was prone to flattery. And flatter they did. Word started to spread that our American idiot might run for the Republican nomination for president in 1988. And shortly after he returned from Moscow, he took a full-page ad out in the New York Times declaring that there's nothing wrong with America's foreign policy that a little backbone can't cure. It took the form of an open letter to the American people on why America should stop paying to defend countries that can afford to defend themselves. The ad criticized Ronald Reagan's foreign policy and implied skepticism about U.S. participation in NATO. The night it first ran, he went on CNN and was asked about NATO.
There are many other countries and taking tremendous advantage of this, including NATO. If you look at the payments that we're making to NATO, they're totally disproportionate with everybody else's, and it's ridiculous.
Fast forward to 2016, that American idiot, Donald John Trump, actually became president, due almost entirely to his celebrity as a former reality TV star on NBC. And now, as an ex-president, having committed serial crimes before, during, and after his presidency, including fomenting an attempted coup to try to remain in office after losing his bid for re-election because of how incompetent he was as president, that Donald John Trump is still peddling those same pro-Russia talking points so perfectly aligned with the Kremlin. It's almost as if he was still receiving them from Moscow. Russia helped get Donald Trump elected in 2016, according to the Mueller report, by exploiting American social and racial divisions and amplifying them online, and by stealing Hillary Clinton's emails and exploiting the news media's voracious interest in them. And former KGB spy Vladimir Putin, who has been dictator of Russia in one way or another for nearly 25 years, is getting bolder and more blatant in his determination to subordinate the United States to him, to rebuild the Soviet Union by annexing Ukraine, which he lectured another American idiot, Tucker Carlson, belongs to Russia, and by openly jailing and killing his opposition with impunity, the latest victim being Alexei Navalny. While Trump leads one of our two major political parties, with his fellow Republicans parroting Russian talking points to the point where it's almost parody.
Whether you agree with it or not, Vladimir Putin believes that Russia has a historic claim to parts of western Ukraine. So our opinion would be to view it in that light, as a sincere expression of what he thinks.
We're paying for a war, a proxy war with Russia, when I've never seen Putin actually show in any detail his plans to invade Europe. No one has shown me that. So I don't believe the lies that I'm being told about this.
Making people believe like Ukraine can win. No, Ukraine can't. Putin won't lose. Putin will not lose. He's not going to lose. You have to factor that into the reality if you're going to deal with this thing effectively to bring this war to an end.
Today, the Republicans' dear leader, Donald John Trump, had no response to the death of Alexei Navalny, as one would expect from someone so enthralled to Vladimir Putin. But President Biden did not mince words about Navalny's death or the Russian dictator's regime.